So it's Fashion Revolution Week, and honestly, I was overwhelmed at the amount of people that signed up to this. So thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you to my panelists and my amazing gals who have also taken the time to volunteer to do this. So I guess for me, the week has made me think a lot, but also it's made me realize how much of a community there is at the moment around sustainable fashion and how positive the space can be. And also it's just inspired me to, to do these little events and to get the chat going a bit as well. So without further ado, I'll introduce my lovely panelists. So we'll start with Sufiatu Oyindamola, who is an amazing digital content creator. She's also a Minti Ambassador, which I'm very proud of. And she's a body positive advocate. So I met Sufiatu over Instagram, and actually you've already met Emily Goodbye in London, haven't you?
Yeah.
London Laura, yeah. So Sufiatu did also a bit of modeling for us, which was amazing. And yeah, delighted to have you here. Next up is Irish designer, sustainable designer Laoise Carey, who actually went to NCAD. She was a year below me, as was it, or a year or two, in the fashion design course. And she's doing incredible things in the sustainable fashion design world at the moment. And yeah, that's Laoise for you. And finally, Lucie Towndrow, who is my Insta BFF. I love the way we met on Instagram, and we already have plans to visit each other. But she is a digital content creator as well as a manager. And she's a sustainable fashion advocate herself with the most incredible secondhand wardrobe. So yeah, without further ado, I think we should probably just maybe give like a brief little intro to yourselves, to who you are. We start with Lucie.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Lucie, I am 24 and I am, a digital content creator and also a social media manager in my full-time role as well. So I kind of get to see both sides of influencer culture, which I think gives me quite a unique perspective on the influencer marketing industry and also the issues of sustainability that kind of arise within it. So I kind of started my journey as a proper like influencer. I was, thinking, oh yeah, I want to work with these big brands, and then really just educated myself on kind of the horrors of fast fashion and just cut it out because I didn't want to be a part of it. So hopefully if there's anything I can help you guys with in terms of secondhand fashion, transitioning towards being more sustainable shopper, my Instagram DMs are open. Secondhand styling, sourcing, I'm your gal, so hopefully I can help with some tips this evening.
Amazing, thanks Lucie. Laoise, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, so I'm Laoise Carey and I'm a fashion designer based in Ireland. I was living in London for 2 years working in the fashion industry and was planning to go traveling before COVID hit and ended up starting my own brand while I was at home. So it's been great. I use mostly vintage and upcycled textiles. And I stopped buying fast fashion probably when I moved to college or university 6 or 7 years ago, and I've been hoarding vintage things ever since.
Amazing. Yeah, your designs are just incredible. And I'm sure your wardrobe is the exact same. And finally, Sufiatu, would you like to give a little introduction to yourself? Oh, I think you're on mute. Hold on 1 second. How did that happen? I've asked you to unmute there, Sufiatu. Maybe you can.
Yeah. Sorry, yes, I was on mute. So I'm Sufiatu and I'm from London and I'm 23. I got into my slow fashion journey, I guess, while I was at university. So I left uni back in 2019 and I'd started buying secondhand and thrifting around that point through friends who were buying secondhand. And I learned a lot about sustainable fashion from the circle of friends I'd made at university. And it's just something I've spread through my friendship groups as well. And I've become really obsessed with Vinted as my main source of finding clothes that fit. And one of my favorite things to do really is to just go on Vinted and just look at the amazing things that you can find, because a lot of people tend to come to me and say, how do I find all of the pieces that I tend to find on Vinted? And it's because I just spend too much time on the app. And another thing that I do quite a bit of is messaging brands about their sizing and asking if they will be increasing their sizings and if they offer made to measure services as well. So I'm quite vocal about sizing, especially within fashion.
Yeah, amazing. So I'm going to launch straight into your video, Sufiatu, that you posted on IGTV recently, that I found so interesting, because you were talking a little bit about your own experience with body inclusivity and size diversity in the fashion industry, and you mentioned some brands like House of Sunny and brands like that, and I've seen myself recently a lot of brands kind of getting a lot of stick for their sizing. And I guess what I took from your video was the question that you were posing was, you know, what message are these brands trying to put across? So I think, like, when I listened to the video, what came to mind was a comment that I witnessed. So sorry, I never introduced myself. I'm Laura. I'm a fashion designer, but I also I'm founder of Studio Minti. So it's a sustainable fashion hub. So it's a mixture between product, education, and service, all around sustainable fashion. So I left my career in design last year to start up. So sorry, back to Sufiatu. When the one thing I thought of was a comment that I had heard in my most recent job that I actually lost due to COVID, and it was my creative director. I was trying to push for getting more size inclusivity in the brand, and you know, it was the usual, oh, you know, but we go up to a size 16, and it's like, okay, yeah, so does everyone else. And there was a comment made from her, which was like, we were looking for kind of size inclusive models and people to shoot our new campaign. And one of the comments she made was, oh yeah, like, yeah, I don't mind plus size, but not that plus size. So I think that was like a real shock for me to hear, that certain people in the industry still actually believe that. So I don't know if you want to talk a bit about that side of things, and the difficulties you faced as well with it.
Yeah, I will say it's still shocking that this is something that's a norm, especially within the fashion industry, whether it's within the sustainable space or even in the fast fashion space. It's an attitude that a lot of people have within the industry. And it's really sad to see, especially as a consumer. Now, if we look over, I guess, the past 10 years, so one thing I've done, actually, I recently wrote an article on size inclusivity that's on 76 Agency's website, if anybody wants to actually have a read of that. But so over the past 10 years, we've definitely seen a rise in brands creating their own curve ranges. So we've seen ASOS, who started their range around 2010, and then you had a bunch of other fast fashion brands who followed suit after that. And a lot of the issues that arise with these collections that were being made was the fact that you make a curve category that's completely outside of your main category of clothing, and all of the clothes are also different. And what I've noticed with sustainable brands that are quite larger in following and are a bit more popular, it's either they don't have any clothes that are larger than maybe a UK 14, which is quite ridiculous to me, just because the standard size in the UK, like the average size, is 16. So the fact that most brands aren't even going up to a size 16 now is a whole other problem within itself. And when you are someone who obviously wants to buy from more ethical brands and wants to find an ethical way to consume fashion, because you might struggle with thrifting, as I have quite a few times when I've tried to buy things secondhand, you might want to buy new, and then you go on a website and you discover that actually this brand doesn't cater to you or has anything available in your size. And when it comes to slow and sustainable fashion, you would expect that the brands are more inclusive and that they have a different approach to this sort of thing, because the purpose of sustainable fashion is to cut down on waste and it's to be just more ethical overall. So what brands should really be doing is creating smaller collections with a wider range of sizes, rather than creating these large collections with a limited range of sizes. I spoke to a fashion blogger who is called Nadia, and she's on Instagram, and her handle is the East London Edit. And she spoke to me a lot about how a lot of brands tend to perform size elitism, which is a massive problem simply because they exclude those who are plus size. And as I've had a larger body for most of my life, I've always been excluded from fashion at each point of my life. As a kid, I didn't really have the opportunity to fit into clothes made for children of a particular age, simply because there's always been a cutoff point. And it's come to a point where we actually do need to see change within the industry, and that clothes need to be made to fit bodies rather than bodies being forced to fit into clothes, because that's the way it should be. We shouldn't be given this pressure that we need to cut down ourselves just to fit into clothing. Clothing should be something that's accessible, and it should be something that everyone has access to. And I feel the main issue is that where brands obviously exclude larger bodies, you've given the message that larger bodies are undesirable and that you have no interest in catering to everyone.
Yeah, so is this their message? That's kind of what I'm thinking, you know, like it's either that, you know, they don't want to bother, they just are lazy, they don't want to bother sizing up their patterns, or they don't want to see a plus size body in their clothing. It can only be one of two. And that's exactly what you just touched on, which is size elitism. And it's gross. It's really disgusting. Also, if these brands are claiming to be sustainable, you know, being size exclusive isn't sustainable in itself, surely.
No, not at all. And what I've seen with a lot of, I guess, plus size fashion bloggers who have wanted to, I guess, step into sustainable fashion and actually make more conscious choices when shopping, it's the fact that they can't see their sizes available on the websites. Now, for me, I'm a UK 18/20, and sometimes I can fit into a 16, and I'm only at the beginning of the spectrum of the plus size fashion sector. So with all the other sizes that there, you've got, you know, a 22, a 24, 26, 28, there are more sizes that are being left out. And the fact that I, who is someone who's literally at the beginning of the spectrum, struggles to find clothing, it's a massive issue that definitely needs to be addressed, especially when the average is a UK 16. On the business side of things, a lot of companies tend to say it's obviously more expensive and it's a longer process to make the extended sizes, simply because you've got to create sample sizes in each size to make sure that they fit each body type. And one of my favorite designers is actually Christian Siriano. I think I pronounced his name properly. I hope I haven't butchered his name, but he's one of my favorite designers, and he's like a high-end women's fashion designer. And what stood out for me a few years ago when I came across him was the fact that he was dressing plus size women, and he was giving plus size women carpets when they were going, he was giving plus size women gowns when they were going on the red carpet, and he was dressing people like Oprah, he was dressing Lizzo. And it was really nice to see an actual designer who does high-end fashion and does runway and actually cares about people with larger bodies, because a lot of high-end designers don't actually cater to plus size bodies.
Absolutely. And also, like, you know, plus size bodies, but women of color as well. Like you just mentioned Lizzo, you know, she's an amazing advocate for this, you know, and it's really still so exclusive, I do believe, at the heart of it. But I guess as well, what I wanted to touch on was, I mean, diversity in fashion is such a broad topic. We won't have time in the evening to address it all. But I guess I'd love to know, with the three of you guys, what diversity means to you. I mean, personally, if we want to start with Lucie, maybe.
So I obviously benefit from size privilege, and I am completely aware of that because I have always been kind of on the smaller side. I've never had the struggles that a plus size person would have when it comes to finding clothes. In fact, I still fit into children's clothes because I'm too small. Like, I'm only 5 foot, so I'm literally like a child size. I think I'm like age 11. So yeah, it kind of, I have the other side of things where I have never experienced the exclusive nature of women's fashion, but because of that, I'm really passionate about making it inclusive for other people, because I have always benefited from it. It's people like me and other straight size people who really should be doing the work to make sure that there aren't people that are excluded, because being excluded from fashion is bad enough, and then having to be the people that ask to be included is not, it's not acceptable. You know, we should be doing that for them, to say, look, you know, I might be a size 6, 8, 10, but there are women out there and the average size, you know, is a 16. So we need to be making sure that they don't have the struggle of getting clothes that fit them, and we should be the ones asking those questions. And I think literally from watching your IGTV, Sufiatu, I created a guide on Instagram on size inclusive, slow and sustainable fashion brands, because you know, a lot of the people that follow any of us will fit into that category, and it's exclusive of me to only feature brands that are suitable for my size. You know, it's our responsibility to make sure that we are producing content that caters for every body shape, you know, not just people that look like me. So yeah, that's something I'm really passionate about, you know, in especially with sustainability, because like you said, it can't be sustainable if it only dresses half of the UK, because you're forcing those women into shopping fast fashion because there are no other options to cater for their body size, and that's just not okay.
Yeah, and you know, such a good point. And also, you know, from having design experience, I'm sure Alicia, you see this as well. Like when, let's say, like the recent Simone Rocha H&M collaboration came out, and designers start to talk about size inclusivity and being really, you know, inclusive and diverse, and you know, we love all bodies. As a designer, you're kind of like, well, it's, yes, it's obviously work to pattern grade, but you're literally, it's the baseline you should be doing. That's literally the base you should do for.
When it's their job. They are.
Yeah, like there's no more work than any other size. So, but yeah, Leisha, I wanted to kind of get your opinion on like designers that like say they're going to be inclusive, or like make promises and then don't really meet them.
Yeah, I think the recent kind of controversy was like, it was definitely huge. It had a huge impact because I saw people who I'd never seen sharing anything about size inclusivity before commenting on it, and you know, it's awful that it comes to that some, you know, somebody has to exclude the plus sizes for then people to realize, oh look, they're being excluded. I mean, it shouldn't come to that, but I think for a company like H&M who have the capacity to do that, it's really disappointing to see them not do it and just avoid the issue. But yeah, for me, I've just launched my first collection last September, October, and for me, like you're saying, the grading and all that, I taught myself to grade because we didn't learn it in uni. And for my first collection, my capacity was 6 to 16. So my first collection, the sizes were 6 to 16. And for this, my new collection that I'm working on, I've been working loads on grading and trying to push it past 16 to get more like a broader size range in. Because I just think it is so disappointing to see big brands who have the capacity to do it not do it. And then for small brands, you know, it's hard, but I think like it can be done, and it just takes time and it takes effort and it takes investment. And once you invest in the extra, you know, just going the extra mile for your consumer, they will appreciate that so much more, and your brand will grow because you've got more customers. And it's, you know, it's just about including people, making people feel welcome, and you know, not saying, oh, this is not for you, because that's just not a good.
I think that's the main point, is like the frustration. And like as a straight size person, I was frustrated seeing that whole H&M Simone Rocha thing come out, because, well, you know, it's just horrible. I hate to see that happening nowadays in general. But also when I source for Studio Minti, source like pre-loved garments, I can see the struggle. Even though I'm not shopping for myself, I'm shopping with a conscious effort to source plus sizes, and they're really, really few and far between. And if you don't want, like, you know, kind of like a butterfly printed really horrible tunic thing or something, it's hard. Like, it's really hard. And like, I completely understand this, your struggle, Sufiatu, as well, because like, you're not even looking just at thrifting, you're even looking at new brands, new designers that are producing new things, and they're not even stepping up to the mark, which is, yeah, it's pretty shocking still nowadays that it's happening. But I think the work that you are doing, Sufiatu, is amazing, because the more we talk about it, the more people are going to call people out, I do believe, and get things moving on a bit. So I'm going to launch in. I'm conscious of time. I've set myself this time schedule, and I'm hoping we can keep to it to get to all the questions and stuff. So I'm going to be really strict with myself. Sorry if I'm jumping a bit. But I'd love to chat to you guys a bit about sustainable fashion and influencer culture, because it's something that I have only recently started to like read up a lot, and think about a lot, and also links into the body positivity movement in a big way. Because in my eyes, I mean, like, Instagram is flooded. It's lending itself so widely to consumer culture, and I'm just wondering now, with the influencer model as it stands, how that lends itself to sustainability, and how it can be a thing, really. I feel like, Lucie, you would have a big insight into this.
Yeah, so the influencer model and sustainability naturally do not really go hand in hand, because obviously influencers are a marketing tool, not your friends. They're marketing tools. You know, they're there to encourage you to purchase. So they're there to encourage you to consume. However they start out, you know, whether they create content, whether they just enjoy taking pictures, you know, regardless of how you intend to influence people, if you have a platform, you are classed as an influencer. You can have 1,000 followers, you know, and be an influencer. It really doesn't matter how many you've got, it's how engaged your followers are with you. So you've got this one hand of kind of people encouraging you to buy stuff, and then you've got the other hand of reduce your consumption and buy mindfully and consciously. And obviously they don't particularly marry too well. So I kind of straddle the middle of this, and I think, Sufiatu, you do too. And there's kind of a group of us on Instagram that try and navigate this weird thing of loving clothes and loving creating outfits and content, and consciously purchasing, consuming, and encouraging our followers to do the same. So something that I try and do personally is kind of obviously encouraging secondhand first as like a primary thing, and then kind of slow fashion second. So the reason I prioritize secondhand fashion is because those items are already in existence. So people aren't making anything new. The items already exist and they're already in circulation. So that's what I try and do. And ideally kind of showcasing sustainable alternatives to existing products, whether that's like deodorant, makeup, things that people do kind of purchase more frequently, kind of showing a more sustainable option. So how the influencer kind of sphere and world of marketing works, obviously, especially with Instagram, which is kind of a key influencer marketing platform, is that people post photos of their outfits, makeup, whatever. And in order to stay relevant, they produce a lot of it. And that means that they buy a lot to keep up with that model of creating content, and to kind of stay relevant with their followers. They obviously want stuff that is new in the shops to stay on trend. So they are then encouraging all their followers to purchase based off the back of their content. And it's kind of fueling this cycle of overconsumption, where you feel like you need to purchase the things that influencers are wearing in order to stay trendy or on trend. And ultimately, you know, that's not true. Fashion works in, I think it's 19-year cycles. You'll know this, Laura, but fashion works in cycles. So everything that is in fashion now has been in fashion before, in a slightly different way maybe, but generally it's the same kind of trend. Like mesh tops, big in the 90s, you know, dungarees, big in the 90s, like all of those things that kind of come around, they've all been around before, which means that if you are intent on finding something secondhand, usually you can. So it takes a little bit more effort, you have to invest a little bit more time, and you know, there is a time privilege and a size privilege associated with that, where you may not always be able to find something secondhand, but you can definitely look. And Vinted is also kind of one of my top faves. You know, I love it. I love Vinted, I love eBay.
I think Vinted isn't, you can't get it in the Ireland.
Yeah, I think we spoke about this, didn't you? Which is devastating for you guys. And when that happens for you guys, I can't wait.
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully Studio Minti can offer some sort of alternative.
But, you know, if you can't, I think as well, you know, if you can't buy secondhand, swapping, renting, borrowing, you've got new for swapping, by rotation for renting, borrowing from your friends if you've got friends that are similar size to you, because you can kind of feed that desire for something new without being harmful to the planet. And you know, what we really need to do is break that cycle of needing new, but it's a really long process for unlearning that, and it doesn't happen overnight. So there are ways you can just like reduce your consumption. You can, you know, unsubscribe from ASOS emails, unsubscribe from misguided emails, take the temptation out of your life. That means unfollowing fast fashion influencers, just get rid of it. It's like all those horrible bikini influencers who make you feel crap about yourself. Just get rid, because you know, you don't need it in your life. If there's anything on social media that makes you feel negative about what you currently have, it shouldn't be there. You know, I always think your social media is like your house. Like, you can let people in and you can close the door on people. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think you have to view it like that. And it's the same with influencers in fashion. If you think they're selling too much, get rid of them. You know, you don't need them.
Funny because like I'm sure you get the same, where you like, pretty much my whole wardrobe is secondhand. So when I post photos of myself, I would get a few questions like, where did you get this? And because like, you know, we've all been fed this thing where it's like, if you see someone wearing something on Instagram, you can buy it somewhere. Like this natural mindset that we go to, where it's like we've just been programmed to consume what we see, basically. So it is a bit difficult when you kind of have to be like, well, it's vintage or it's secondhand, or I found this wherever, but you could probably search for this. And some people, let's be honest, they don't want to do the searching.
No.
So it is a bit of a conflicted thing, I guess. And people like Aja Barber and stuff are doing amazing things for for the sustainable influencer world, as well as you guys, obviously. But yeah, I've always just been intrigued about the space and how it's going to play out in the long run, because it's a vicious cycle where fast fashion brands are reliant on the influencers, but at the same time, the influencers are reliant on them because of new content, new clothes, newness.
Yeah.
So it's like this weird vicious circle that I just don't know how will end.
I enjoy, there's kind of like a couple of little niches about re-wearing the things you already own as well. So there's a girl called, her @ is Yi Mags, but her name is Maggie Zhao, and she does #rewear_don't_care, which I love. So it shows re-wearing the same thing on your feed a couple of times. I know there was a challenge going around the other day on Instagram within the kind of slow fashion community that was show the item of clothing on your feed that's been worn the most. And mine was a trench coat that I'd featured 24 times. And I was like, wow, I love that coat. Yeah, Venetia Lamanna also has old outfit of the day. And that's just great to show, like, you know, I've had this for ages, it's been in my wardrobe, but I still love it. Because ultimately, if you don't love something, you know, you shouldn't be buying it. And you shouldn't buy something just because someone else loves it on Instagram. You should buy it because you love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Wise words, Lucie. Leisha, have you ever thought of influencers that you would like to wear your designs, or has it ever been a thing with you? What's your stance on it?
It's hard because I don't even know how to answer this, because most influencers, like as you say, they want to sell their marketing tools, and because all of my pieces are so handmade and they're really one-off, I wouldn't be able to actually like physically make enough pieces for all of their followers to also buy pieces.
And do you think there would be, like, would you see any value in them, just in someone that you know just wearing it to promote? Like, would you?
Yeah, I mean, I think influencers are great to promote your work. And I think there's some really great influencers out there that like they tend to promote more so sustainable fashion than you know, than the fast fashion, but they're really hard to come by. And a lot of the times they're not just fashion influencers. So like usually the people that appreciate my work the most are people who are really invested in sustainability as a lifestyle, and you know, whether it's food or fashion or you know, any sort of activism, you know, those are the types of people that contact me to say love your work.
Yeah.
Not so much the influencers who are trying to sell, because really I'm not going to be able to offer them a discount code or anything like that because I'm so small still. So yeah, it's a tough one, because I would love for, you know, an influencer to wear some of my pieces and the brand to take off, but at the same time I'm wary that I can't actually offer too much.
Yeah, no, definitely. Which actually leads me to like a little question I had for you as a sustainable designer, and the challenges and the kind of future that you see for yourself, because I know you work with only vintage or pre-loved fabrics, or fabrics you've already owned. Which is a challenge in itself. Believe me, I've looked for secondhand fabrics a lot, and they don't come often. And I guess for me, like on my sustainable fashion journey and as a designer myself, you know, I never want the industry to the like creation and innovation to stop with fashion design, and I don't think it has to stop either. And I would never want it to end, because I think it's such a beautiful a space and such a creative outlet for so many people. But I guess as a designer as well, you have so much responsibility as a sustainable designer, sorry. You have so much responsibility as well to kind of determine what happens to your designs down the supply chain and things. Like, let's say, I know you're working for yourself, but like if you're in a brand, you kind of, it's a lot of responsibility to follow up on your designs and to design in a really sustainable way. But I would love to know what changes you would like to see, I guess, in the fashion design industry, or if you see any changes currently happening. I'd be really interested.
Yeah, I see definitely at the moment the made to order way of doing things is becoming super popular, and I am hoping to try and introduce that into my brand as well. And I think that's one of the best ways that a brand can cut down on their waste. And you know, some brands just mass produce all this stuff, and if it doesn't sell, it is waste. And I think the made to order way is so much better for like the environment and for the customer, because people want to have that kind of control over what they're purchasing, and to know it's definitely going to fit them when it arrives. And yeah, I think that's a really, really good change that's been happening recently in fashion. And I think as well in the industry, it's since COVID hit and a lot of people maybe lost their jobs, or you know, their usual work that they would do kind of dried up, and there's been so many kind of home sewers popping up with little brands, and you know, people making things from home and selling them. And that's amazing. But then it becomes on the flip side, there's so many of the same thing, so there's loads of little brands that are offering, like, you know, pieces made from like old, like vintage tablecloths and, you know, vintage textiles and things like that. And as you said, it's really hard to come by them, so sometimes you're kind of, you know, if it's hard to get your voice heard, because there's such a sea of all these like sustainable designers at the moment, like cropping up and saying they're eco-friendly and stuff. And you know, it's hard to know, it's sometimes it's not true.
Yeah.
That they're fully sustainable, but they like put that stamp on it just because it's handmade. But yeah, I think definitely made to order pieces and using dead stock fabric and things like that, it's becoming so popular. I think it's a great way to move forward, but at the same time, it's tough. So I can see why big brands are reluctant to do that, because it requires changing your whole model, and it kind of nearly puts you back 6 months behind everything, because usually designers design in advance and the pieces are produced and manufactured over the course of 6 months, and then they go into the stores. Whereas if you're doing made to order, you have to keep on top of it and be producing and designing, and you're getting in orders and then you have to start producing, rather than you produce first and then get the orders.
And also I think it's hard because people are now kind of like in the frame of mind that you order something online one day and you get it next day delivery on ASOS or something, and it's almost like a rejigging needs to happen of the consumer's mind as well, in terms of like obviously time wise with made to order stuff, but also price wise. I think the more transparency that comes out about how much a garment actually costs, the more the consumer will understand that seeing a t-shirt for €5 is not okay, and that someone down the supply chain is being exploited because of this. But I guess it's a little bit of what Sufiatu touched on, which is the made to measure. You were saying as well, like, and I was actually going to ask you, Sufiatu, like, when we talk about size range, what is the appropriate size to go up and down to? And you have to kind of, but if we had a made to order industry, that would be totally fine because everyone would be able to get their own size.
Definitely. I think because fashion right now is just so accessible, it's very fast. Like, you can order something today and it can arrive tomorrow. We as a society have become very used to getting things at a very fast pace. No one needs anything new tomorrow. So long as you have, clothes at home or you've got clothes on your body. If you live within a Western society, you do not urgently need a new garment the next day. And I feel like it's definitely something that we all need to try and unlearn as a society, because I can remember before that I took the time it would take to make clothes in the past for granted. So I'm Nigerian, and as a Nigerian, when we have like parties or celebrations, we might pick a material and then we'll have like a garment custom made by a tailor. Now, when I was much younger, I'd always wondered why it was taking so long to make, the garment, and didn't really think about the amount of time and effort that is actually put into making clothes, and that it doesn't just pop up one day and then comes the next. And as someone who's also like tried to make things by hand myself, I've definitely like seen firsthand that, it does take time. It is a bit of a struggle, and that the way in which the industry works is just not sustainable. It's not ethical, and it's not fair to the people who make the clothes and source the fabrics at all. And it's definitely something that people need to be educated on, and definitely the made to measure and made to order, I guess, model is something that we should be shifting and moving towards, because it's a model that works best, especially because, what is being made will be made for you and will most likely fit your body. Because when we look at universal sizing and sizing charts, not all sizes will fit each body. A UK 18 or 20 will look different on different bodies. I'm 5'4". Someone who is probably 5'6" or 6 foot could be the same size as me, and our bodies are completely different. So the clothes will fit differently on our bodies as well. So definitely a made to measure service would be more beneficial for everyone.
The universal size chart is a whole other debate. Oh my God.
I think we've DM'd about that before, how like, a size 14 somewhere could be like a size 18 elsewhere. And it's just like they pick a random measurement, put a size on it, and then just decide that's their size. Like, I've seen so many videos where they hold up a pair of jeans and it's the same size, and there's honestly about 4 inches in between some of the brands. And it's like, no wonder people have issues around A, finding clothes that fit, B, returning things that don't fit, because sizes are just plucked out of thin air.
It's literally like they're like, oh, let's call this a 14.
Yeah, I know. Oh, actually, it's a 12, but no one will know.
Yeah. Shh. Like it's like a 14 being I recently saw 14 was an XXL somewhere, and it's just like, what is going on? Like these brands need to reassess.
Yeah.
So look, I would be very keen to know, a quick fire round, your one top tip for anyone that's looking to be more sustainable in their fashion choices. So I don't know, Leisha, do you want to go first?
Yeah. My main tip is to go on the website of brands that you like and go to the About Me section or the About Us. And that is the most telling part of any brand. Like, it doesn't even matter what's on their Instagram. If their About Us is not like adding up to you, or if they don't have an About Us, maybe they have like this really, like, you know, really vague kind of few sentences about feminism and things like that, and nothing sustainability or eco-friendliness, then just like log off, unfollow, don't buy from that brand. And that's the top tip that I use all the time when I'm shopping. If I find any new brand on Instagram, the first place I go is onto the website, About Me. Is there a section about sustainability? Do they tell you where their pieces are made, what country, what factory? Do they talk about their fabrics, and do they have commitments for the future?
Yeah.
And that tells you so much about a brand.
That is such a good point. And my favorite greenwashing quote is that when brands say they're doing their part to save the earth, and it's like, really? With no backup, I don't believe you. So that's a really good tip. Lucie, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, oh gosh, I don't know how to narrow it down. I think for me, kind of a really great step to towards being more sustainable when you're shopping is being intentional with what you're buying. So keeping a list, basically before you allow yourself to buy anything, is have a list. And if it's not on the list, you can't buy it. Like if you have a white jumper, you don't need another one, you know, like those kind of things of being intentional, being like, okay, I don't actually have a pair of jeans that fit me right now, so you can buy another pair of jeans secondhand, you know. Or if you need a winter coat because you don't have one that's thick enough, like you can buy one of those. But you know, I like to kind of operate a one in one out model with my wardrobe. So if I sell something on Vinted, I can buy something on Vinted, you know, to kind of keep it. I mean, I have got a very large wardrobe. I don't know if you can see it. It's up here. It is big because I've always had a lot of clothes, but I swap quite a lot. You know, I think like when I was working from home, I was swapping maybe like 8 things a month. I was just churning stuff out of my wardrobe because I was like, I don't wear this, someone else will, let's go. Like, and it really satiated my need for like new, because I was like, it is new to me, but to someone else, they're getting rid of something they don't wear. So yeah, keep a list. Try swapping. Those are probably my 2. I know you said 1, but 2.
Amazing. Thanks, Lucie. And Sufiatu, what would you say?
Okay, I feel like I'm going to throw in 2 as well. I'll throw in my first one very quickly. Know your measurements. If you don't have a mini sewing kit or measuring tape, it's just really important that you just know your measurements for yourself, because if you're trying to buy anything secondhand, or if you need something custom made, it's just really handy to have them on hand, just so you know that the items that you might want to buy will actually be in your size and they'll actually fit. Because when you buy secondhand, there's no guarantee that it will fit, and you also can't return most of the items that you buy secondhand as well. My other tip, and this is not a promo or anything, is to probably digitize your wardrobe. When I digitized my wardrobe, I used the app called Wearing, and it basically helped me to have a good idea of what I actually already own already, because the last thing you want to do is actually go out and start buying from sustainable brands or start thrifting. It's obviously very good to just have a clear idea of what you have already, and that way you can find the gaps that are already in your wardrobe and what it is that you want to fill in specifically. So that kind of piggybacks of what Lucie has said about just making a note of the items that you want to actually purchase before you purchase, so that your purchases are more intentional and you're being more mindful when you are buying secondhand.
I also use Wearing. It is great. Can second that. Super helpful.
Yeah, I've also tried the hanger turn test. So like if let's say I turn all my wardrobe hangers one way, and then as I wear something, I turn it the other way, and then I realize what I'm not wearing, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Or yeah, so you'll see with the hangers that you haven't worn a certain amount of your wardrobe. And also I think they were amazing tips, sorry. But for me as well, if you're gonna try it, charity shop shopping, my main tip would be to initially the first thing I do when I go to charity shops is look for fabric and color that I like, because I think people can be intimidated by going in and needing to spend a lot of time sifting through lots of rails, but if you have an idea of like colors and fabrics, it makes it that little bit easier if you are privileged enough to go into a charity shop. And also the first thing I did on my sustainable fashion journey was unsubscribe, as someone has already said, I can't remember who it was, but unsubscribe to the apps. So like ASOS, I think it was you, Lucie. I unsubscribed to ASOS, Zara, all of these, and I made sure to unclick the emails. So go into the emails and unsubscribe from them, because it does help when you don't have them in your field of vision. It does help a little bit to get away from them, I also feel. So I'm dying to get on to the Q&As. So I'm going to just open this here. I think I can see it. And thanks to everyone who sent in questions. They were amazing. I have a huge amount. So I might not get through them all, but I'll really try my best. I'm going to start from the beginning. So Neve has asked us, so question regarding thrifting, your thoughts on straight size or mid-size people thrifting the larger sizes from charity shops to tailor or wear oversized, which take these items away from larger bodies? If anyone wants to answer that, please go ahead.
I don't mind answering that, I guess. This is something I've actually spoken to people about before. At first, when this was an issue, I guess I was talking about, I had a very negative perspective where it was mainly that it does limit the options that plus size people do have when they go in to find things, because I do struggle when I try and find clothes, and someone who is a larger size than me will also struggle when they go to buy things secondhand. But what I have noticed is that when I do go into vintage shops, secondhand shops, charity shops, there are so many clothes, and not all of these clothes are also being bought as well. So as each item is individual and unique in its own way, when you do go into these stores, it's really important that I guess we have to bear in mind that there is only one of each item, and it's more so down to luck if you are able to find anything and if you aren't able to find anything. But I do think that when people do go thrifting, it's important to definitely be mindful and intentional. Like, if you are buying a garment that's larger and you're going to be upcycling it, make sure that you're getting the most out of the fabric that you're buying, and you're not just going to cut it in half and throw away the bottom half of the fabric, because that would be completely wasteful.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. The zero waste upcycling is really important, well, to me anyway, but I think, yeah, I have a big, huge bag of scraps in studio that are literally like, some of them could be this size, but I'm like, I will use them. There's another question here. Sorry, I want to get through them, so I'm gonna kind of
quick fire.
Quick fire, yeah. So what can I do as a straight size consumer to make fashion more inclusive for others? And thank you so much for the compliment. Thanks to that person. So as inclusive for others. So I guess my initial tip is to question these brands, which we've already talked about. Lucie has talked about as well. To actually do join in on the fight and ask the brands why they aren't being size inclusive. I don't know if you'd like to add to that, Lucie.
Yeah, so there's a lot of brands that I think are really popular at the moment, like Peachy Den, House of Sunny is another one, and yeah, they go up to 14, and it's just like, why? You clearly make enough money. Your outfits are like £100 a pop, and we know you're not, spending that much on making them. So it is just like, you can afford to make what, 4 patterns? 4 patterns. Is that what, to actually include like half the UK? That's all you need to do. And it's like, just ask them. House of Sunny come back with the most ridiculous worst responses. They're like, yeah, hey babes, we're working on it. So don't believe them when they tell you they are, because we haven't seen it yet and they keep saying they're gonna. So hold them accountable. Like, just be like, hey, you said you were going to work on your size inclusivity and it doesn't look like you have. Will you be doing that anytime soon, or will I have to stop shopping with you? Like, because ultimately you have to hit these brands where it hurts, and if they're going to exclude people, they don't deserve your money as a consumer. So stop shopping with them.
It's a good answer. I'm a believer in sending a friendly email, but maybe I should be, I don't know, but I'm always like, hey, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but blah 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 blah. But I think you can kind of get away with it if you're like friendly, and then they're more inclined to reply, I think.
Yeah.
That's what I found.
I'll give them one chance. I'm like nice the first time. The second time I'm like, I shouldn't have to message you again, but here I am, just being annoying in your DMs.
Give me again.
Yeah.
Another person has asked a question regarding design and diversity. I'm just going to read it. Sorry, it's a little lengthy. So lack of care to some cultures when it comes to design thinking. There's still an issue of cultural appropriation. And as you're in that field, have you seen or know of any of this at hand? I know actually in my recent live with the patent lawyer, she talked about really big luxury houses still do, participating in really terrible cultural appropriation. Isabel Marant was one recently. I don't know if anyone else knows any other ones right now that's happening.
I think Diet Prada is a great account to follow if you want to kind of see what designs are being stolen and appropriated, because they are really, really hot on calling stuff out. And yeah, just holding brands to account. So I would definitely recommend following them. And I know that Dolce & Gabbana kind of came under fire for being quite racist towards Asian, the Asian kind of market, which is obviously one of their biggest markets. So stuff like that, I think people are getting hotter and calling it out, but it is still happening in terms of, last year, I think the Cheongsams, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing those right, the Chinese tops were really in fashion in Topshop, and their traditional Chinese dress. So I thought that was kind of really off when I saw people wearing them from Topshop and Motel. I was like, but those aren't things you should just be kind of appropriating or wearing as kind of casual wear. So I think it happens, all the way through from high street stores up to kind of higher end luxury fashion. So unfortunately, it is still an issue. And yeah, all we can do is call that out again. I feel like we're like an army of just holding people accountable for their poor decisions in the sustainability space or whatever, but ultimately if we don't kind of demand change, it's never going to happen. So
absolutely, we have such power as well as consumers, we really do. I believe so. There's a good few other questions. How can we be conscious consumers in this day and age? I think we've covered a lot of good tips there. How do you think culture affects sustainability? That's an interesting one. I mean, sorry, does anyone want to take this?
I wouldn't mind talking about this, but I think that sustainability, like as a word, has become like the culture surrounding that. It's become a trend really in recent years, and like I think there's a danger in that, because brands then like hop on this buzzword, and like for someone to call a t-shirt sustainable, in my head that just doesn't compute, because what we're talking about is a sustainable business model, and you need to have every aspect correct before you can call the clothing sustainable or eco-friendly or ethical. And so I think that like it's amazing that like the culture surrounding kind of secondhand clothing a few years ago was like, it was like students and maybe people who don't have huge budget to spend on clothes that would normally buy secondhand, and it was, in a way, it was looked down upon for a long time to be wearing secondhand or hand-me-down items, or that type of thing. And suddenly the culture has changed and it's trendy, and everyone is claiming their clothes are sustainable, and you have to try and get that sweet spot with a brand, and in your own wardrobe, where you're not taking you know, just accepting what people say. If someone says my brand's sustainable, you know, really question why, how, and what are you doing to make it eco-friendly, ethical, and sustainable as a whole business model. So yeah.
I think something just to add to that really quickly is that a lot of people do think that handmade means sustainable, but all clothes are handmade. And I think people remove the fact a real person has made their top from Primark, Topshop, wherever, and they think a robot does it. But all clothes are handmade. Just because something is handmade does not mean it's sustainable. That is down to the fabrics, the dyes that are used, you know, how many are being produced, how often they're being produced, what sizes they're being produced in. There's so many other factors aside from the fact of, yes, I made it myself, because that might mean it's ethical, but it doesn't mean it's sustainable. So I think kind of unpacking the jargon around sustainability as well makes it a little bit more accessible to people who might just be starting out in it. And yeah, I think that's kind of an important thing to do, I guess, that we all can do a bit of that and just question each other on what it actually means.
But I guess that's one of the main issues in the industry as well, is that these terms are being thrown around really loosely, and that there are really no legal attachments to them. So like anybody can really say that they're being sustainable until someone comes along and asks them why they are, and then they don't really know what to say. But it's definitely well, the whole greenwashing thing as well is the whole other day. But yeah, I do believe that it's really down to as well brands taking responsibility for what language they use around their brand. So like I think there's a lot of unintentional greenwashing in the industry where someone that may have not put time into looking at what they're saying actually means will mislead a consumer, which is also a really important thing to do as a brand, as well as a consumer, to do your research, to definitely have facts to back up what you say, for sure. And last question I have here, which we've 1 minute left. Any tips for a fashion design student to design sustainably? Alicia, I think this is probably a good one for you.
Yeah, well, when I was in uni, the tutors were like, why do you not want to buy, you know, fabric from a fabric shop? And I was like, I just don't want to. And it was really hard. And sometimes you just have to stick with your gut. You just have to ignore what other people think if they're trying to tell you it's not going to be easy and it's, you know, it's not going to be good. I think you just have to stick to your guns and ensure that you know where your fabric is coming from, and just have a clear idea of your morals and your kind of ethos for what your collection is going to be. I made everything from upcycled and vintage textiles, so I went and bought like secondhand curtains and things like that, which gives you a lot of fabric to work with, and it's easier in that way. But it is tough. It's hard, but it's definitely doable. And another thing, like with trims, like buttons and things like that, those things are so much easier now to find online on eBay and places like that. So you can definitely, even if you can't use secondhand fabric or vintage fabric, or you know, if you're going to use organic cotton or something and it's a virgin fabric, that's fine, but try, you know, do your research and try your best. When you're in uni, it's all about like testing and learning and doing your best, and then when you actually get into the industry, you will have learned so much from your kind of trial and error in college. So yeah, that's my advice for trying to be sustainable for your graduate collection.
Amazing, that's such great advice. And yeah, when I was in college, there was no speak of sustainability at all, which was mad. I'm not that old, it wasn't that long ago, but you know, it's still like, it's crazy that they didn't even mention it. So you do have to do a lot of the work yourself if you do want to be a sustainable designer, 100%. Is there anything anybody wants to say before I say my thank yous and everything? No, we're all good. Okay, well, I just want to say to everyone, thank you so much. To our panelists, thank you for giving your time to this. It was so, like, I feel so invigorated and just hopeful for the industry, because we have so many like-minded people out there that are fighting for a better place. And yeah, the more we talk about these things, the better the world will get. And I hope people learned something from it, and I know I did myself. So yeah, I will definitely, this is all recorded, and I will link all the girls' Instagrams, handles and everything in the description of the video. And yeah, thank you so much again to you guys and to everyone who attended and all your questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for hosting, Laura.
Not at all, not at all. Hope to do it again. Cool. Well,
See you later.
bye. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.